Hey everybody, welcome back. So I'm just going to be picking up where I left off. I've got a little bit of work I'm going to do in the face, just a little bit, the face and the cheek. So when I'm working, I normally don't sit in a chair like this. I'm normally on my feet and I'm walking back and forth. So I'm able to see the image better. It's very hard to see it from here. So getting back away from the painting gives me a better view of it, and then I can come back. And so I can see some things that are not where I want them to be. Again, now that I'm back in the seat, it's a little hard to see them, but I have a sense of them. I'm going to play around with them a little bit, assuming the paint is still wet. I have a little bit in the ear I want to do. I'm going to work in. I'm going to get the neck taken care of, a little bit of the shirt, come back and finish up the hair, and that'll be it. Hopefully it will not take very long. I'm hoping maybe about 2 hours. So I don't know how much I'm going to be describing what I'm doing as I'm going. We're just kind of winging it today. It's not being live streamed, so there's not going to be any questions. But I'm sure Daniel and I will be having conversations as we're going here. And if I think something's important, I will address it. So.
It's great. I have Kevin all to myself this time.
And again, somebody had asked about dry paint. This paint is relatively dry. It's really kind of stiff. So I'm not going to work over here. I'm going to grab some of my wet paint and kind of pull it off to the side here. And this, good and wet on the canvas, it's on the panel. It's still wet enough. All right, and so here I'm just, it's going to be too light. Again, each of these paints I'm going to make a new area where I'm going to grab from. And again, I'm going to be careful if the paint that's down starts dragging a little bit. If it feels like sticky, I'm going to try to stay away from those areas because the paint, it can peel back if it's kind of like half dry. I don't want to work on paint that is mostly dry. It can kind of roll over itself and you get texture in your painting that you don't want. And you can see it kind of dragging here a little bit. All right, so the brush is just kind of pulling. The painting's it's a little bit tacky at the moment. And I may have to go down to a smaller brush just to be able to effectively do this. Just the amount of friction on the size of that brush, making it a little bit hard to get in and do what I want to do here. And so again, I just, I don't fight it. I just move on to a different brush. I let the painting tell me what it needs.
It's pretty amazing how quickly that cheek changed its impression of form when you lightened that shadow. Mm-hmm.
Well, I darkened this so that this light wasn't taking up everything. Right, and so it creates a plane, the light hitting on the top, and then kind of the front. So even though we're thinking like frontal plane, the front of the face, and then here, receding plane, this area is actually a top and a bottom kind of flexed like this. So one is well lit and one isn't. They're both in the light, but one has a lot more light landing on it. So just overwriting some of the stuff. Again, things that when I stepped back, I realized it was a little too dark or a little too light. So I want to get in and I want to address them. And then I'll move on. Right, and some of this stuff is dried funny. This stuff, this edge, all of this down in here, it's already dry and so it's sinking in. When I'm finished and the painting dries, I'm going to seal the painting, which we talked about in the last video. I'm going to use an alkyd medium. I'm going to seal the painting so all of this stuff will look correct when we come back next time. But this is always going to dry funny. I would never go over this and try to fix it. You can't fix it. You've got to let it dry and then you seal the painting and that'll fix it. It's like oiling out or varnishing. If the painting were finished, I would just varnish it. Being very gentle here. Trying not to spread this in places that I don't want it. Go down to a dry brush just to make sure that I'm not spreading paint in places I don't want it to be. Trying to make sure that I'm softening any edges that I need soft.
I've got a question for you, Kevin.
Yes.
So as you're working on this and you're putting in these lights, I know you're making some adjustments from last night's pass, but you're still in this main stage of putting in the lights. Mm-hmm. So your paint density, are you managing varying levels of paint density, or are you keeping it all the same at this point in the painting?
Yeah, all of the paint is the same at this point. I'm not varying. Basically, it's how I mixed it. I'm using that exact same density throughout at this point. And what it is that equal paint density, the paint plays nice together. It's like, imagine if I were trying to mix two densities like peanut butter and jelly. Like peanut butter would be the paint without any medium in it, and then jelly would kind of wet and slippery and would be with extra medium. So two different densities like that. They're not going to blend well. You're better off working with one density, managing what you can there, and then if you're going to work so for me when I glaze, so this will go down like peanut butter, and then when it dries, then I'll do a glaze which will be like jelly. It'll be more like syrup.
Do you often use food textures to describe your paintings?
Whatever comes to mind that I think will do a good job. It's so easy to describe what I'm doing with paint. But if you don't know enough about paint, then I'm speaking a language you can't understand. And so if I can talk about something that everybody knows, it just makes it more accessible from the standpoint of an education. I'm always looking for more common ways to describe, or using more common things to describe what I do in paint, because I find that it's just easier to make sense of it. Like most people drive, so if I can use driving as an example, I can frame an idea that might be more difficult to frame if I'm just talking about a skill you don't have or you've never done. So yeah, I'm always making comparisons like that. I think that's a good way. It's a good way to teach. And also what it does is it forces me to think more about how to explain something. If I'm just describing what I'm doing, I only have to think so much about what I'm doing. If I'm trying to find something that is similar, that would give the same information but is common, it forces me to really think about what I'm doing and what would be like it. And so you'll hear me talk about cooking. Like driving is another thing I do talk about from time to time. I use that as a vehicle to explain things. So yeah, food is one.
And you also enjoy cooking yourself.
Yes. I actually talked about that yesterday. That I with my clients, that I cook in their homes if they let me. They don't all let me, but the ones that do.
I will say Kevin can make a really mean steak.
I remember that time that you were like, steak is steak.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you said.
Wow.
Steak is steak. And I was like, no, it's not. And that wasn't even like a really good cut. That was just like ShopRite, standard, middle of the road quality cut, just properly cooked.
Mm. Yeah. I still remember that. It was so good.
Yeah.
Spoiled me from steakhouses, for sure.
Yeah, well, but that's like with everything. If you understand, I understand what happens to meat when you cook it. And so I know how to cook a steak. I can cook it anywhere because I understand I understand the science of it, right? And so some people, you know, they'll cook a steak and it's dry even when it's medium rare, you know, and it's like, how does that happen? Same with like braised. I think I talked about this actually in the first video. Like braised meat, you're cooking meat in liquid. How can it possibly be dry? But most people who braise meat actually wind up with dry food. It's like, how's that possible? It's being cooked in a liquid. Well, there's some science behind that. The temperature that you cook it at, basically, if it's too high, constricts the meat and forces all of the liquid out of it. And so you have to be at like a perfect temperature in order to get a braise to go properly. You know, that's like, to me, that stuff is fun. Like I find that stuff interesting. You know, I cook because I enjoy it. I find it relaxing.
Do you cook trial by error, or do you watch cooking shows, or what?
You know what, I start with recipes from cookbooks, you know, earlier on, and I would do exactly what was in the cookbook, and when I was done, I would then go and, so like let's say that I braised something like short ribs. The meat comes out dry. Well, why? So then I bought a book that is the science of cooking. I don't remember the name of it. And so I'd look like, why, like you just kind of look up braising meat, just the skill of braising meat by itself, not a recipe, but just how to do it. And it's clearly described, like what you have to do in order to have the result that you want, right? And it's like, so for me, much like I talk about like paint people first, then learn anatomy. Cook a meal first, see what questions it generates, then go and educate yourself about the questions you've now formulated. So I actually do what I say in my own life. I'm not a hypocrite in that way. Maybe other ways, but not that way.
So Leonardo made scientific inventions, and you dabble in cooking.
Yeah.
Expanding your horizons as an artist.
You know what? I love good food. I love good food, so nice to be able to create it. Yeah, but once I have a recipe, I then, and I do it exactly the way the recipe dictates, and I figure out how to do it to match the recipe. Like, so again, I make braised short ribs, they're terrible, they're dry. I figure out how to make them so they're not dry. I then do the recipe again the next time I want to eat it, and I add those pieces of information into my process while I cook. If the food comes out good, now I know what the recipe yields. Now I decide whether or not I like the flavor. Maybe it was too salty for me. I take salt out for the next time. And maybe I think maybe it needed a little bit of something else. Or like I think maybe the wine, it needed a little bit more wine. So I put a little bit more wine, and it's measured, an extra 10%. See what that does. I taste that. If I like that, then I'm good. I lock that recipe in. I kind of write it out for myself. I make my notations in the book as to what I want changed. I almost feel like when I do it, my cookbook at home looks like, for those of you who have seen the Harry Potter movies, it looks like the book, the book with the potions that Harry Potter got that had all of Snape's notes that told him how to do everything. It's like that. Like the book is actually all wrong, but the notes tell you how to get all the potions right. And my cookbook's kind of like that. All of my notes. This is the wrong temperature. Leave the pot open. Don't close it. Like things like that. And so like for braising, you put the pot in the oven, but it's got to be cracked open because too much heat builds up inside, and that dries out the meat. Again, it constricts the meat. So if you leave the pot opened, the temperature doesn't build inside of the pot. And it's just a little bit of the slightest difference. There's a window. I forget what the numbers are, but there's a little window of like 25 degrees. It might not even be that much. And if you're below that, the meat doesn't cook properly. And if you're above it, the meat doesn't cook properly. You've got to be in this small window. And it's a matter of like how much the Dutch oven is opened inside of your oven at the right temperature and for how long. Right, and then of course then you've got evaporation. Instead of the thing being closed, now you've got all the liquid inside evaporating, so you have to account for that. There's a lot of stuff. Clearly, I have a sense of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this stuff.
So it's your fascination for for cooking, and I know you have lots of other passions and interests, in addition to art. Would you say that those things kind of come together and contribute to the different, like, art is the easiest example to make. Like, do you see how cooking makes a difference in your art, or
Well,
how
they're
does
all
that
the
work
same.
as your?
I mean, this stuff is all the same. Like, if you're gonna cook, you want to cook well, you don't leave the kitchen while you're cooking. You stay there. You don't burn stuff while you're standing there watching your food cook, right? It's when you walk out of the kitchen and stand in front of the TV because you have 5 minutes. 5 minutes turns into 8, and then your food is ruined, right? Like for me, when I paint, it's all of my attention. My attention's not divided. I'm here. I'm living in this space, right here. When I when I cook, I'm in the kitchen. I'm going from dish to dish, I cue them up so I can do one thing and get it going, and then start the next thing. I'll be able to do 2 things before that other dish requires any attention. And I schedule it, I plan it, so that I can work my way through the day. And I know, like, I may have a half-hour window where I can be outside of the kitchen, but even that, I occupy myself in the kitchen. I have an alarm set. You stage everything for success, so that so that your chances of success are greater. And that's in everything in life. Da Vinci said that once you've mastered one thing, you've mastered all things. And I think that he was right about that. And it's because it's not about the particular thing, but it's more about mastering yourself. Learning how to stay focused on the thing that you're doing, stay committed and have a high expectation of your result, not leaving things to chance, right? Because these are habits. When I work, nothing is left to chance. I mean, I experiment a lot, and you saw that on the Harry Styles video. I'm an experiment, and I put myself at risk. But those are growth opportunities for me. But like when I'm working on a painting that has to be done, like a commission piece, I don't play any games. I still experiment, but not wildly. Like I'm experimenting, I'm playing with different things, but they're small things that I've actually calculated out, and I say, well, I haven't done this before. I'm going to see how this thing plays. But those of you who have watched the Grandmaster video know I don't have any problem working 6 hours on a face and deciding, even though it looks fine, that it's not going the way I want it to, and taking a rag and wiping the whole thing off. Right? And you can't be afraid to do stuff like that. But I'm committed to excellence in everything that I do. And I think really that's what Da Vinci was talking about when he said, when you've mastered one thing, you've mastered all things. Because to master any one thing, the level of commitment that has to come from you has to be absolute. We're not talking about proficiency, we're talking about mastery, right? And so if we're talking mastery, in order to master, I don't care, even if it's ping pong, you can't half measure your way through that and truly master it. Doesn't matter what it is. Painting is just what we're talking about here, but I think all things in that way are the same. And so, now, as I'm doing this, these things are all dried. I don't know if they look right. I can't really tell. Like back in here, this stuff, it looks terrible. I don't really know what's drying in here yet, or what's dry and what's not, and what's sunk in and what isn't. And so I have to just trust that what, like this looks really harsh, but it didn't last night. And so I'm gonna leave it alone, and I'm just going to assume for now that it just has dried funny. And if it hasn't, then I'll have to go in and clean it up later on. But I'm gonna trust that what I did yesterday, that I got my work done properly. I knew that this was an issue. I knew I was gonna come back in and do that. But other than that, I'm like most of the stuff, I'm just gonna leave it be. If there's an issue, I'll deal with it later on, and you'll be able to see me do that. So I think I'm done with the face. I've got one little thing I wanted to do with the ear. I saw this. So I have this really dark area in here, but the truth is that this is all nice and colorful. It's like rich, colorful shadow. It's not plugged up, it's not hair, which is okay to be this dark. So I want to just get this. Right, and I can see like the hair ends like right here. So just kind of change that shape. Clean up the edge of the face.
So this kind of comes back to the excellence you were just talking about, where in this pass you are doing the absolute best to your ability within what you can see at this moment. Obviously it's dried a little bit, and so there's some limitations there. But if you see something that you can improve, you improve it now, not later.
If there's something that I know, like up in here, this is all wet, I can see that, but this is dry. I can't really do anything here because if I do, I can't judge what's actually going on there. Like this is dry. That edge is going to be there later on, but because the paint that's underneath is drawing the oil from the layer on top that I did yesterday, we're getting this kind of weird edge. It's not going to be there later on when I seal the painting. It'll go away. So I wouldn't mess around here. I'm just going to let it be. I got stuff going on in the nose the same way, but like out here I could work because it was all wet. So the wet places I can work, but I wouldn't go into the places that are drying and they're looking funny. I would leave them alone and I'll deal with them in the next pass. That's just the way to do it. Again, you can't guess what this is, what it actually looks like, what these things look like, based on how much it's shifted. Every painting is going to be a little different, and so don't anticipate it. Let each part be done when it's supposed to be done. Let the painting dry, seal the painting, let it all come back to its original luster, then make decisions about it. Because if I go and I fix this stuff now, there's a good chance that after I seal the painting, it'll look patched. Where if I let it dry and then I fix it, I'll match it to exactly what's already there. Right now I can't match it because I can't tell what's actually there. So there's no point in it.
And would you make that adjustment after you put an isolating layer down?
Yes.
Or you
yes.
would? Okay.
After the isolating layer.
And that's so that the luster of the paint is back to what it would be visible from the viewer at the finished point of the painting.
Yep. Okay, I'm just going to come down. I'm going to get started on the neck. I think I'm going to work into a... Actually, let me just stay with these. So, again, back to like yesterday. I go back to the original shade. I'm going to get all that blocked in, and then I'll work my way across. So, figuring out where this is, and I know a lot of this is this shade. Now, because of the way this is broken down, this is going to cover a lot, and then when I glaze, right, so this shade is going to be all the way out here. This is a little darker, but all of this is going to be filled with this shade to start, and when I glaze, I will then impart a gradient working across. All right, and I'm going to keep this part relatively simple. I'm not worried about the neck. The face is really where my attention is. And so I really want to keep it focused there. Just kind of making sense of places. And I'm plumb lining. When you see me do stuff like this, I'm looking at the shade and I'm feeling like this is where the shade ends. So I'm kind of drawing a line up and down, seeing it's with the outside of her mouth. So that allows me to place this. I'm not worried about the necklace. I really don't care about it. It may or may not find its way back into the painting. It's not a concern to me. Again,
what would you say?
I have no idea what's going on down here, so I'm just going to let this stuff drop away. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, what would you say is your goal out of this I guess there's 4 passes here, but this 3-part series of you doing this whole portrait, what's your goal out of this?
What am I looking to make?
What do you want to show your viewers? What points are you trying to get across here?
All I'm trying to do is give people an idea of how something like this can be constructed. Right, so, people think, you think in terms of painting. I'm going to paint a portrait, right? What I'm showing here is that this can be built like it can be built like a house, right? So you don't think about, like if you think about an entire house, let's say we're just trying to build the framing of the house. We're not going to put plumbing or electrical or any of that in, right? A house, if you look at a whole house, it looks like a lot of work. It looks like it's an impossible undertaking unless you have a background in building houses. But if you start by just building the frame is just 2x4s. And you put them every 2 feet and you nail them together and you make sure they're squared off, 8 feet tall, 2 feet apart. You do that and you connect them, you make the room the size you want it to be, and then you stand up 2 corners and you seam them, you lock those corners together, and then you bring up another side and lock that. You now have a frame, and then you can build a roof on top of it, right? They're very simple things when you do one at a time, right? And you're not thinking in terms of like, as you're doing each job, you're not thinking about building a house, you're just focusing on the job at hand. You're constructing a house one project at a time. Build the frame, then sheetrock the frame, or you put the outside, plywood on the outside, then you sheetrock the frame. Right? You're doing this one step at a time. And so it's construction. Each stage is a construction. And what I'm trying to show here is that a painting is built in the same way. It's a form of construction. If I think about the portrait as a finished thing, it's overwhelming. But if I think of it just as one step, then another step, then another step, and it's a form of construction, it becomes much simpler and much more manageable. It's just not so intimidating. And so for the students, for the people that are watching this, to get a better sense of how something like this is constructed, to take some of the mystery out of it and say, hey, you know what, if I can break this down into these simple steps, it's really not that intimidating. It's not scary. It's pretty straightforward, even a portrait. Right? And so for me, like that's really what I'm trying to get at here. Just show some simple construction and say, hey, this simple approach, if you can follow it step by step and stay focused in each step without worrying about the step that comes before or the one that comes after, if you just follow the steps as they're given to you, you can produce something pretty solid. You don't have to be intimidated by this. All right, and I think most people, once we become intimidated by something, it's very hard to get in there and do the work and problem solve, and because this is all just problem solving. What shade goes where? What edge connects this shade to that shade? Right? That's all I'm doing. And so it becomes harder and harder to do that stuff when you're paralyzed with fear about success or failure. Right? And so what we want to do is take away the reasons to be afraid. Make each piece that we're handling small and simple so they're not intimidating. And it makes it easier to then jump in and play around with this stuff and take risks, right? And make sense of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's and it comes back to those fundamentals that we're teaching.
Always comes back. If you understand how the fundamentals work, there's no reason to ever be intimidated with doing this stuff. Right? And again, those are the people who are in Evolve. Like, you should recognize what I'm doing. Even if you're in block 1, if you're a few paintings in, value against value, and then the kind of edge that connects it, right? That's the same thinking. Now, the process that I'm using is not the same, but the thinking is. I'm using exactly the same thinking as you're using in block 1. I'm applying the paint differently, but I'm using the same thinking, the same ideas. The ideas are the guiding principles that we teach starting in block 1. And so, and they're so ingrained in me at this point. I don't really think about them. I'm able to just freely paint. Even though like the rules are solidly locked in place, I'm not really thinking about the rules while I'm painting. I'm just painting, and the rules tend to they tend to apply themselves because it's how I think, right? I've done it long enough that now when I work, I only think that way. So kind of in the background, subconsciously, I'm breaking down this painting the same way that I have you break it down in block 1 or block 3. And I'm applying that same thinking across the board. Even if it doesn't necessarily look like it, in the back of my mind, those ideas are what are pushing me forward in the painting. They're the things that are guiding me in the direction of where the painting is going. And I trust them. I don't second guess them. I've used them enough times that I know that they yield a result. They do what they're supposed to do every time. I've learned to trust them. This is part of experience. Learning to trust the stuff that you do, that you know it works because you've done it enough times. You know, I tell you, in self-defense, most people, like going and taking a class on self-defense is useless. It really is. Studying self-defense for years is not, but taking a class on it is a waste of time, right? Because you have to develop a level of confidence with the stuff that you're being taught, that it actually works, so that when a terrible circumstance comes up and you need to use it, you believe that it works. Because if you're not sure, what will happen is something will occur. You'll have these things that you've been taught, but you won't believe in them. You're going to worry more about angering the person that's attacking you than anything else. And so you'll stand there paralyzed, afraid to actually act. However, if you know from extensive practice that these things that you know work and work well, and the person that you're going to do them to, they're not going to have a chance to be angry with what you're going to do to them because it's going to be over that fast. Well, now you're going to approach it all very differently, but you have to have that confidence, which only comes from doing it over and over and over, not a couple of dozen times, but hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of times, before you really settle into the idea that should something happen, that these tools are there at your disposal, and they will deliver for you. Right? The confidence is critical. And that's in everything. That's not just in this, it's in everything. You have to believe in the tools you're applying. If you don't believe in them, they're not going to work for you. And so, you know, when you're doing these things, like practicing, again, getting that experience, seeing them win, seeing them succeed over and over and over, yielding results consistently every time you sit down and work, so that like your confidence in this stuff is unshakable. You know exactly what you're going to get when you sit down because you get it every time because you understand how it works. And the same with, like I said, you know, self-defense. If you want to learn self-defense, it's something you have to commit to. It's a lifetime. I mean, it really is. You know, and I say that from experience. I mean, I've studied one form of martial arts or another since I was like 14 years old. And so, and I can tell you that, like, even the stuff that's really cool and works really well, you have to use it. You have to practice it all the time to get it in your head how effective it is. It has to be practiced. It's not enough to just know how it works. You have to have some experience behind it, right? And any good martial arts school, you're going to spend your time. You're going to be practicing rote exercise over and over and over again till the stuff is muscle memory. And painting is no different. You do this stuff, it's got to get to the point where you can do it without thinking. Somewhere in the back of your brain, all the calculations are being made, but you're not having to labor over it. It's just that it looks so natural, right? And like when I do this, I don't look like I'm not calculating very much, but all the calculations are being made. I couldn't paint. I couldn't just sit down with my brain turned off and just make a painting. Nobody can do that. I actually talked about that yesterday a bit. You know, you try to play that game, you'll be very sorry. Art has a mind of its own if you don't treat it with respect. And so, at least for us artists, maybe not for viewers, but for the artists, if you don't treat what you do with respect, you'll pay for that. And so, again, like, for me, it probably looks like I just, I put the paint down, it does what it's supposed to do, but all the calculations, they're all being made here. I'm having to do the same calculations that anyone in Block 1 or Block 2 or Block 3 in Evolve does, but my brain is doing them, most of them, kind of in the background. I don't have to think very much. I don't let my mind wander either. My mind is on what I'm doing here. And some of the problem solving is going on, I'm actually thinking it through, but enough of it is just, it's now second nature. I've been doing it for so long, and I know that I can put down paint and I can kind of push it around, and I'm confident that no matter what I do, the painting will kind of roll the way I want it to eventually. And that's an important thing to achieve, because then, you really become fearless in your application. You don't worry about taking risks, because you know that no matter where the painting goes, you control the painting process. But that comes with time. You have to build your way there through successes. And again, those successes, they're all small to start. Incremental growth. And again, we talked about that yesterday. Little baby steps, getting to the point where, like something simple, you're confident with it. Then you get a little bit more complex and you get confident with it. And then a little bit more complex, you just keep building. Like those little 5% increments like we talked about yesterday. And that's like where guided experience comes in. It's one thing to just practice. It's another thing to practice and have a guide standing beside you, making sure that the things you're doing are right. That makes a big difference. It's a necessary thing in learning.
So what would you say are good qualities of a guide in art?
Well, the first thing is that the guide has to know what they're doing. That if you have a guide who doesn't act, if you're looking at a potential teacher, the teacher has to be able to produce at the level you want to produce, right? So if you want to produce professional level paintings, you can't go to a teacher that can't produce professional level paintings, because they don't have the answers to the questions you have. So if you want to be a professional, you need to study with a pro. That's a starting point. Now, not every pro can teach it. In fact, I can tell you from experience, it is a real challenge to figure out how to teach this. Because most of what I do now, as I was kind of just describing, is I'm working on instinct. I'm working on decades of experience. The tools, the knowledge, Evolve teaches it in 3 blocks. That's everything. All the stuff that comes after that is experience. It really is. And so what you're seeing here is a little bit of skill. And anyone who's in Block 4 and Evolve has already got all the skill I'm applying. What they're lacking, what makes me able to do this the way I do it and other people not be able to, is that I have 30 years of experience using those tools. And so experience is critical. And it's like, again, if you're looking for a good teacher, you need somebody who actually has the knowledge, that not just that can produce, right? Because you can have, like I said, a world-class professional can produce the work, but are they able to separate all of their experience that makes it so easy to them from the core knowledge that you as a student who is uninitiated requires in order to learn, to get your feet under you? As somebody who's been down that road, like I said yesterday, when I first started teaching, I was a terrible teacher. Not just bad, I was terrible. I was everything that I really hate about the education system in art in this country, and really around the world. And it's just that, like, I never really thought about it. I thought, well, I can just explain things to people and they'll understand. But it never occurred to me that most of what I was trying to explain had been earned through experience. And so you can't teach experience. You can only earn it, right? You can be taught knowledge, but experience is earned by clocking time in front of an easel. And you need somebody who already has the answers to the questions to kind of stand there with you and help you, so that when you get off into the weeds, they kind of bump you and put you back on the path. So again, going back, you can't learn professional level skills from somebody who doesn't have them. So right away, you eliminate like anyone who's college educated that doesn't work as a professional. You're wasting your time with them, right? If you're not a working pro, you have little to offer from the standpoint of training somebody to become a pro. That's just the reality. You can't teach something you don't personally know. You know, and so that's a starting point. Find a person who knows, who has the applicable skills that you want. That's the person you study with. Now, once you find somebody like that, that becomes a very small pool of people. But once you find those people, then you have to find somebody who can separate all of their experience from the core pieces of knowledge and teach just the knowledge. And then that is willing to stand patiently beside you while you fumble around with it and earn your own experience. That's how you learn. And so when you're looking for a place to learn, that's what you're looking for. Someone who can do already the things you want to learn to do, so that they can hold your hand and guide you along the way as they're teaching you. And of course, you need somebody who's patient, because you're not going to have a lot to offer when you first start. You are going to test their patience. And the reason you're going to test their patience is they're not going to understand why you can't see that's not straight. Like, that blue you're mixing is completely wrong. You know, you're putting white paint down in something that should have a highlight that's a value 3. And how can you not see that? And for them to stand quietly behind you and let you make your mistakes, and then talk to you about them afterwards. Ask, why does this look right to you? Let's put the reference next to the photograph. Does this look right to you? Like, to be able to take their time with you and kind of teach you, like, it's like so I've got a puppy at home right now. She's 6 months old. And it's like, it took a while for her to learn her name. It's like, how many times do you have to say the name before the dog recognizes when you say the name that it means them? And after that, then it was sit. And sitting is working just fine unless there's a distraction, in which case sitting doesn't work at all. She's still having accidents in the house, even though she's crated. When she's out, if I blink, she has an accident in the house. She doesn't understand the difference between being outside to go to the bathroom or being in the house. It doesn't make any sense to her. It'd be very easy to get irritated. I spend too many hours of my day cleaning up after her, whether she's tearing up my pillows off my couch or she's peeing on the floor, or whatever it is she's doing. But she's a baby. She's learning, and at some point, if I'm patient with her and I take the time and I teach her and I stay on top of all of it, at some point I will wind up with a really wonderful companion who I won't have any problems like that with, and I will get to enjoy many, many years of that. But it's only if I'm patient with her now. If I'm patient with her and I take the time to do all the things with her that I need to do. And so that requires a lot of patience on my part. It requires me putting myself second often enough to take care of things with her, right? But that's the job of a teacher, if they take the job seriously. Like for me, I talked about this yesterday. I don't focus on my own career anymore. I focus on what the students in my program are doing. That's where my energy goes these days. I'm committed to the success of my students, and I am waiting for my students to surpass me, and I'm excited about that as an idea. I may cry on the day that it happens, privately, but I say that jokingly, but I'm looking forward to that point where my students start to surpass me, because I'm invested in my students' success, right? And so for me, patience is easy, right? Just like with the puppy. There are rewards, big rewards that I'm going to get to enjoy as a teacher if I'm patient with my students. Just like if I'm patient with the puppy, I'm going to have a lifetime, I'm going to have 10 years or so of companionship with this dog. It's going to be wonderful. yes, it's tough right now. It's exhausting at times. It's frustrating at times. But I never show that to her. I keep it to myself, and I work with her to get her where I need her to be. Do the same thing with your students. And so, patience is another critical thing in a teacher. Again, patience comes from, like I said, being invested in your students' success. If you are committed to your students succeeding, it's not that hard to be patient with them and to work with them until they get where they're going. And if you're not that committed to the success, you get frustrated when they don't get something the first time, because then you have to repeat it. And it's like, if you don't mind repeating something 20 times, because you know that eventually the person will get it, then you'll be fine. You won't become impatient with them. But if a teacher starts barking at you because the third time, like, they're frustrated, how can you not see this? And Daniel can attest. I mean, we went like a year and a half. He could not perceive temperature shifts and things. And I only struck him once over that time. I mean, it was earned. But,
true.
But it was, but I was very patient with him. It wasn't always easy. Because to me, it was like, how can you not see this? And I was showing him all these different things, and he couldn't perceive it. How can you fault somebody for something that they simply can't perceive? Eventually, he came in one day and he was like, I see temperature.
It was incredible.
It was very funny. It's everywhere. It's temperature shifts.
Yeah. It is amazing. It changed my life. Like, you suddenly start seeing temperature shifts and everything around you. Oh my gosh. It was mind-blowing. And actually, I did talk about that in one of my YouTube videos. And I even tried to make a little illustration of what it was like, how I saw this white, I think it was a white can or something, how I saw it beforehand, and then what I realized it actually was. And yeah, that gets me so passionate all over again. I mean, I love that, I think that's a big part of what learning art really taps into, is teaching people how to see, how to understand just everything that's kind of under the surface of it all. And you start to realize that color is so much more nuanced and beautiful, and there's variations in everything, like you look at dull walls that are just painted in one color, and you start to see temperature shifts inside of them and value shifts inside of them, and I don't know, it just gets me so excited.
It's
so
pretty cool. Yeah, and it's like, one of the great things is when you can't see it, and then all of a sudden you can. And then it's like, it's amazing. It's amazing when you turn that corner, because it's so obvious, And then for some people, it's easy. They look and they see it right away. I've never been that person. Like, I've always had to find the stuff. It's taken time, right? Some people, it comes easier than for others, and that's fine, Like any of you who have seen the video of my portfolio when I was younger, that I don't have any talent. What people think of as talent, I just work hard. Some of you, if you're watching, you may not know this, but I actually don't believe in talent. I don't believe that talent is a word used by people to describe why they can't do something, not why they can. People who can do things, they know that they're able to do it because they have worked hard to earn a skill. All of us know that. Like, I've worked really hard over the years to be able to do what I do here, what I make look so easy. But somebody else will just use the word talent. Oh, you're talented. And it's like, well, that discounts the thousands, tens of thousands of hours that I struggled to learn how to do what I'm doing. I mean, I did a calculation that when I was doing illustration, many of you have probably heard this idea that it takes 10,000 hours to develop mastery in a thing. That idea has been utterly debunked, but the general idea, it makes sense. Like, there's a set amount of time to develop skills, and if you don't commit that energy, those hours, you're not going to have mastery over something, right? And so, and I say that the idea has been debunked, right? Because you think about, like, so 10,000 hours is the number that was used to develop mastery, and I think Malcolm Gladwell is the one who put forth the idea. I could be wrong about that. But you think about it, like a neurosurgeon, 10,000 hours to develop that skill set might be right. But a guy who does balloon animals at children's parties, I don't think 10,000 hours is going to be needed for mastery. So like maybe you think about like each skill maybe takes 1 hour. So the guy who makes balloon animals might have 126 skills or 1,000 skills. So it's 126 hours to develop mastery, or 1,000 hours. Where a neurosurgeon might have 30,000 individual skills that have to be stacked together for them to be able to do their work. So true mastery in that field would be 30,000 hours, right? But the idea makes sense, like based on how many skills have to be developed, right? And the skills are all little small things, not big things, all small things that kind of stack together to give you a whole skill set. You commit the energy, the number of hours necessary based on the complexity of the thing you're trying to learn.
So how many hours does it take for painting?
Well, I have no idea. But I've clocked, I can say, like the whole point of that was that when I was an illustrator, I estimate that I clocked about 40,000 hours in front of an easel working. About 40,000 over those years. And I did not have mastery. I am still figuring it out. Now, mind you, I didn't go to school. I wasn't trained, and so I'm still fumbling around with a lot of things. I'm still learning, which is great, and you should always still be learning. But for me, I'm still just figuring out like all of it. I don't feel like I'm in like I own this stuff. I'm still making sense of it. There are things that I come across from sometimes where I'm just like, wow, I had a real blind spot for that. And that's a simple thing. I don't know how I missed that along the way. And that's great. I mean, I love when I come across things unexpectedly and they remind me that I don't know everything, you know? Or for that matter, that it's not even close, that I really don't know much at all. And I know most people would not be so comfortable with that idea. But I actually like the idea that I still have so much to learn. I like that idea. It, I don't know, I mean, I'd hate to think that at some point I'm gonna run out of things to learn, that I'm gonna have all of it. You know, Michelangelo actually, I think it was like in his late 80s at the time, you know, and Michelangelo was producing master grade work at like 12 years old, like master grade drawings at 12 years old. And so, I mean, he had a lifetime. He died at 89, and he worked his whole life. And in his late 80s, and I think actually near his death, he said that one of his major regrets in life was that he had just learned the alphabet of his trade, which is just daunting for somebody as prolific and as just, I mean, this guy's just off the chart with his skills. For him at that point to kind of step back and say he just really got it figured out. I mean, that's again, I think it's really cool, but it's also, it's daunting that, like, I'll probably never get there. I don't paint enough. My life is, I have other things going on where it's all he did. You can see it in his work, the level of commitment that he gave to his work. My level of commitment is nothing compared to that. And so if he achieved that in, what, 80 years or 78 years of laboring at the level that he did, I have no chance of scratching the surface of the alphabet of this trade. And I'm okay with that. I don't have to be Michelangelo. I love what I do. This is my happy space, you know? And I love doing it. I love sharing it. I don't need to be Michelangelo, you know? People pay me for what I do. I make a nice living at this, you know? So what else do I need? I'm not looking for fame. I'm just looking to be able to do what I enjoy, you know, and share it.
Do you celebrate the fact that you are, for the most part, a self-taught artist?
Oh, no, no. Wow, that is an ignorant viewpoint to think, to celebrate or treat that as a badge of honor. Wow, no, no, absolutely not. It's a terrible way to go about becoming an artist. You know, and I touched on this yesterday. I mean, everything that I do, I had to fight, really fight, get in the trenches, and I burned hours and days and weeks and months and years of my life figuring out things that, had I been educated by somebody who knew what they were doing, it could have been handed to me in a matter of hours. I spent a year, and in that year, the amount of money and time that was just thrown away in failed approaches and struggling needlessly, frustration. I mean, just none of that is necessary. There's no badge of honor that goes with that. Why struggle if you don't have to? You know, it just happens to be my story, but I'm not proud of it, and I would not recommend it to anybody. You have an opportunity to get an education from somebody without having to reinvent everything, to learn it from the beginning by yourself. Take advantage. Take advantage. Like I said, I mean, if I could go back, if I had access to somebody who could teach it to me, then yeah, I mean, I would take that. Actually, I want to do that.
Are there no advantages to having to strive extra hard to find those? Because in some ways, just to kind of get a debate going here, you as a self-taught artist had to, like you said, you kind of did have to reinvent, figure out, you know, come back to the basics of these things,
yes,
which did perhaps, I would make the assertion, contributed in some way to how you now teach thousands of artists. So,
yes, yes. So what I would say on that front is that I struggled for a very, very long time. Like, really struggled to figure this stuff out. Spent years disappointed with the work I was producing, frustrated, unable to figure out how to get what I wanted in certain circumstances, all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, it's fine. It's my story, and it's how I got here. And it's made it possible for me, I think, to teach in the manner that I do. Right? I teach the way that I do, and I'm able to explain it the way that I do and break it down, and my students get the results that they do because I've been able to make sense of this from the standpoint, like a high level of result, from the standpoint of someone who knows nothing. Because I have had to, I understand this stuff at a microscopic level. And again, so the benefit is in the hands of the students who study with me. The benefit doesn't come to me. I'm able to share what I've got from my 3 decades of laboring. And I'm able to share it with students. And so from the standpoint of being a teacher, yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. From the standpoint of being an artist, it is a terrible, terrible thing. I'm now at a point where I can paint and I don't have to think about stuff. I've figured out enough, not everything, but enough that I can paint, and I'm happy with what I do. I sleep well at night. I don't sweat my paintings anymore. Not everything is everything I want it to be, but I'm happy with what I do. I never leave things in a state that is less than I know how to leave them in. There are many artists in the world who are better, they're more knowledgeable than I am, but I'm not in competition with them. Like, I really don't care what they're doing. I'm friends with a lot of them. And I wish them the best. I want them to be successful. I love what they do. The fact that their art is in the world enriches my life and everybody else's, makes the world a more beautiful place. And so it's not competition. For me, I'm doing this for me. I share it with people so that other people can enjoy the benefit of, like I talked to you about yesterday, this wonderful life that I have would only exist because of art. And so if I can share what I've learned, that I've worked so hard for, and needlessly, and make that path smoother for other people, it feels like a responsibility to do that. I mean, I do it because I want to, but I feel responsible to. I don't own this information. This information is really, it's on loan to me while I'm here. I don't own it. I don't feel like I own it. And so it's my responsibility to share it. If I don't share it, then I take it with me. It doesn't seem right.
Mm. It's like another kind of portraiture in the sense of how portraiture relates to legacy. You're leaving behind a legacy by passing on this information.
Yeah, and I'm not, it's funny, like I'm not thinking about it like that. Like, I mean, I have no interest in celebrity. I have no interest in, I just like, I'm a quiet person. I like to just do my thing and go about my business. I like to be left alone. But I have this thing that I figured out, and it really is, it doesn't matter it wouldn't matter if this was cooking or it wouldn't matter what it is. I have figured something out, and I am in the position to share it with other human beings that are looking for it, that maybe don't have access, like I didn't when I was young. I didn't have access to an art education when I was young. My parents, even if we had an art program, right down the street from where I grew up, my parents couldn't have afforded to send me to it. And so, this program, we do our best to keep it really inexpensive. We really are trying to make sure that this is accessible to anybody who wants it. It's very important to us. And so, we just, both Mitch and I, when we got together on this, we're both of the same mind that sharing this information is important. It's important to both of us because we didn't have it. We had to fight so hard to get what we do have. And for those of you who don't know, Mitch is he's not a painter like this. He actually, I think his bio is on the website. But Mitch is a very successful artist in his own right, just a very different field. But he's been building online resources for aspiring artists for many, many years. And when we met, he was actually looking for a fundamental program because for all of the things that he had going on, the fundamentals seemed to be missing everywhere. All the people that he dealt with, none of them seemed to be able to deliver the actual fundamentals. And so, when he found the Art Academy, the school, well, one, he didn't believe the results. He had to come down and see it with his own eyes because he didn't believe it was real, which was funny. I get that a lot. And then once he was here, he spent a week. I walked him through the program, and then on the other side of it, like at the end of the week, he just sat me down and asked me about digitizing the program. That was when I said it couldn't be done. Like I said, clearly I was mistaken about that.
So let's talk about making it accessible and also making a high quality program. Because on the online world, for a lot of people who are on YouTube and finding like online art tutorials, for example, the price range of Evolve is a little bit higher than what a lot of them are expecting from an education. And so how do you balance, like what do you mean when you use that word accessible for a program that seemingly has a bit of a sticker shock for people who are used to online art tutorials?
Well, I mean, look, generally, not always, but generally you get what you pay for. Things that are free tend to have very little value. That tends to be the nature of them. And we, like I said, what Evolve charges for the education is almost entirely put back into the company, almost entirely. The amount of staff necessary to check thousands and thousands and thousands of homework assignments daily, go one after another, after round the clock, having people who are on call checking homework assignments. The constant infrastructure rebuilding and expansion to account for new ideas that we have and larger groups of people coming in. advertising to reach the audience so that people who are looking for us become aware that we even exist. That's a hard thing to do. And then it's like, it's like not like like you do a piece of advertising and people see it and they're like, oh, I'm going to go and buy that. You have to have a massive footprint online in order for people to see a lot of different things to convince them that this thing that's not in their home but is out somewhere in the world, it's, that they can't touch, it's not tangible, is actually real. And it's like the amount of times you have to reach out and contact and connect with a person. I forget how, they say it's something like 17 times. For somebody who's looking to buy a car, they have to receive 17 ads from you on that car before they'll make the purchase. And that's somebody who's ready to buy the car. 17 contacts is, I think, the number. So, like if you're looking for an art program, right, we're not even talking about a specific one, but an art program, you have 100 options. We have to reach you so many times in order for you as a potential student to kind of connect with what we're doing. And all of these things, they cost money. Again, and that's not even talking about the material. You get old Holland paints. I mean, you're talking about the material. I forget how much the block 1, 2 box, the blocks 1 through 4. Blocks 1 through 4, it's like $1,100 in material. It's insane. It is insane. It's like half the price of the program. We're shipping you materials, right? So you don't go to the store. The paint shows up, the brushes, the canvas, the photo reference. All of the materials are showing up at your door. You don't have to go to the store and buy it, right? It all comes to you. And again, we're supplying you with the finest paint in the world, with handmade brushes, so that all of the odds are stacked in your favor, right? And so, yeah, I mean, there might be some sticker shock, but, so you buy into a program that's $29 a month, and you watch videos, and you're basically on your own. Evolve, whatever the monthly payments are, you're getting all of the materials, which cover more than half of the cost of the program or thereabout. So half of what you spend every month is actually paying for the materials you got. And then the other half is covering all of the people who are involved in interacting with you and making sure that everything is working. Like I said, we have instructors that are there all the time. They're checking homework day and night, right? Other programs don't have these things. And so like I said, these things, they all cost money. They all cost money. So yeah, there might be sticker shock initially, but when you see what is offered, right? Because there's a difference between cost and value, right? So if I said to you that I want you to give me $100,000 and I'll give you a car, right? I don't tell you what kind of car, just I'll give you a car, $100,000. Well, the cost is $100,000, but we don't know what the value is. So if you give me $100,000 and I give you a Ford Focus that you could buy for like $14,000, the value of what you got for the cost is a terrible interaction. Mm-hmm. However, if you give me the $100,000 and I give you a one-of-a-kind Lamborghini that costs $4 million to build, the value of what you got for the cost is a pretty good deal. The cost is the same, right? And the cost, $100,000, might seem like a lot of money until the value is delivered. And so I would make the assertion that with Evolve, what we charge for the program is a tiny amount of money for what we offer. Tiny. Again, you can look at what the students do. Everybody decides for themselves. But this education, it costs something like 1 penny on the dollar of what an art college costs. And we deliver the results in about 1/4 of the time if you're doing what you're supposed to do. And we deliver better results. Not just better, like magnitudes better than the best colleges that are out there. And I would stand by that argument. And bear in mind also, this is critical. Like, so even if you look at like the ateliers, and I'm not attacking anybody. You've got schools like Angel Academy and you've got the Florence Academy, incredible students that come out of the schools. Those schools take 12 students by portfolio. They are skimming only the best, most driven, focused students in the world. And they're taking a tiny handful. And they produce students that are no better than I produce here in the school or that we're producing through Evolve. But here, anybody who walks in can be trained. If I skimmed the top 100% of students off the top, I'd be creating gods, art gods. They'd be incredible, and it would be effortless for me. With this program, if I was getting only the most focused and driven students, the stuff that would be coming out of the school would be incredible, and I'll prove it to you. So the Art Renewal Center, you can look that up online. They have an annual salon every year. And basically what it is, if you're not familiar with the traditional salons, artists from around the world, they bring their work, it's a competition. A jury would then goes through the work and selects the best work, and that stuff is displayed. And so the Art Renewal Center, which is a wonderful organization, they do this annual salon, and a couple of years back they started the Vinci Initiative, which is a student category for this competition. It's a global competition, so anywhere in the world you can submit, and it was students up to 19 years old. So almost 100% of the pieces that go into this competition for the students, and I would say, I don't imagine, it probably is 100%, the students are all studying with professionals, or they're in places like the Florence Academy. I can tell you, like, within the category, almost all of the winners are students from the Florence Academy. They're 19-year-olds at the Florence Academy, and they do beautiful work. Not everybody, but a large number of them. The work is beautiful. The first year of the Da Vinci Initiative, I had a 17-year-old kid from this school take first place. Didn't have a portfolio to come in here, wasn't skimmed off the top, wasn't doing this full time. She was here 2.5 hours a week, competing with people in Florence, Italy, doing it every day for a year in what is arguably one of the finest ateliers in the world, and it is. So this program stands up. Now, if I had the students that had gotten into the Florence Academy, if 10 of them submitted, we'd have had the top 10 prizes, I guarantee it. If 20 students submitted, we'd have had the top 20 of prizes. Program works. Well, that was a long run. Anyway, I have a lot of confidence in what we do, not because I licked it up off the ground, but because the students step up. I would love to show that back wall. 13 years old, 15 years old, 18 years old, at some point. I have 3 paintings that were done during this summer. They're actually all being entered in the Art Renewal competition this year. Actually, no, the 13-year-old, I think she's too young. But there's a 13-year-old that did a copy of an Albert Bierstadt, and it's like, it's insane. If it were full scale, you could put it up on a museum wall and nobody would think twice about it being the original. 13 years old. Crazy stuff. But anyway, maybe when we're done with this video, if you grab that, we'll turn the lights on and people can see it. Worth staying till the end to see that. Yeah, so we are going to do that.
Yep, no problem. And also, I'm going to drop the link to that painting by the student that Kevin is talking about for people to see. What is it called? You know the name of the painting?
I don't know the name of the painting. I just know it's Bierstadt.
Oh no, I'm sorry, the Da Vinci Award.
Oh, the Da Vinci Award. I think it's the Da Vinci Initiative, or that's what it was called, but artrenewal.org is the website, and then you can see their annual competitions. But definitely an organization worth supporting, and an organization they have a lot of really great resources there. But if you like realism, it's a good place to be. It's a great place to go and see artwork that's being created by some of the best artists of our time. And again, we're dealing in realists, but again, if you're here, you're probably, even if it's not where you want to go with your work, you're probably interested in it to some degree. So.
Going back to the price and the materials question. So wouldn't Evolve be able to be cheaper if Evolve wasn't also sending all of those art supplies to students? Like, what if students, or what if artists who are interested in Evolve already have so many art supplies, and the idea of getting more art supplies just to go through this program is kind of daunting to them? Like, how do you work that out?
Well, look, I mean, we use the materials that we use. So there's a couple of things. One is, the likelihood that a student has gone out and bought Old Holland paint is very small, right? Because it's expensive, and most people think if it's that expensive, it's got to be for the pros, right? So very few people are going to go out as a hobbyist and commit to this kind of material. Most people don't understand, again, where this paint is concerned, cost against value. But also, if they'd gone out and, even if they've purchased this paint, did they get a palette that works together? Or are they just random colors, right? This palette that I have here is designed to work. All the colors work and cover the broadest range of the spectrum that you can. And so if one of these colors is removed, you wind up with a blind spot in your colors, in your color palette. Switch out two of the colors for two different colors, and now you wind up with these real gaps, things you can't replicate color-wise. And so having a proper palette, again, having proper brushes, having good reference material, like all of these things are critical to your success. And if, that's the starting point. But if people are just allowed to go out and buy what they want to do the work, then we don't know when we're, as our instructors, are looking over a student's work, we don't have any idea whether or not maybe the colors that you bought were Winsor Newton, or they were Gamblin, or they were maybe student grade paint from Maymery. We don't know what you're using. And so we don't know if the paint is the problem. You might be doing everything right, but the colors, the green that you have, because it's a student grade paint, simply cannot do what the green that we are sending you is capable of doing. And so your palette has this limited range of ability, and you're doing everything right, but the material is holding you back. That's why we send, and the thing is, it creates a consistency. Every single student in our program is working with exactly the same material. It's all standardized so that we know where the problems are, we know where the shortcomings are, we know where the strengths are within the materials, with what shows up in the box. If there's a problem, we already have the answers because it's the same problem over and over. It's, if there's an issue with material, it is always the same, right? And we know how to troubleshoot it, where if it's a different brand of paint or a different canvas, we don't really know what the material does or doesn't do, right? And it's just, there are too many different types of paint for us to be on top of all of that and juggle. Or it's just like mixing paint, Old Holland and, for some colors, Winsor Newton for others. And a lot of artists do that. Me, I like to stick with one brand. The quality of everything across the board, it plays together nicely. It's just my preference. But to me, having the best material sent, making sure that everything is identical from student to student to student, so everybody is equal. Everybody is equal, and when the instructors are looking at work, they know exactly what they're looking at. They can tell, I know what colors you mixed to get that particular shade there because I work with the same paint as you do, right? Because our instructors are people who have gone through the program. So they know the materials. They know what these paints yield. They know if they see a color, they know how it would be created. They know how you came about it. And that's important. It's important from the instructor side to be effective in helping you as a student.
I'm not sure if you answered this question in a previous recent live class, so just let me know, Kevin. Mm-hmm. But so there's something out there called student grade paints.
Yes.
And yet you're having beginner artists using these professional level paints.
Yep.
Why? Why can't they just get away with the student grade paints?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes really to what I was just talking about. So really good paint is not going to make you a better artist. Like Old Holland paint, as great as it is not going to make you a better artist. But working with a subpar material can really hold you back. When you're working, if the materials are hard to work with, you will adjust what you're doing, even if you're doing the right thing, to make the materials give you the result. And so you can actually ruin your technique because the bad materials force that. If you're using good materials, the materials are never the problem. The issue is always with you as the artist. And so if you can depend on the materials to always be everything that they can possibly be, you're always looking inward for where the failings are. And again, I don't have to question when somebody submits homework, if I'm looking at it, I don't have to question whether material was a problem. Too oily, right? So you get a tube of student grade paint and you put the paint out and it's got 3 times the amount of oil in it than it should. And so when you paint on the painting, it doesn't cover. You get these like scratchy looking areas that look, they barely look toned instead of, they're not even painted, they don't look solid. And the artist might have done everything right, but the material just doesn't yield the result. There's no way to know that. There's no way to know that when I'm looking at somebody's work on a screen. You know, they submitted a piece of artwork from Poland or India. There's no way for me to know what they did or didn't do, you know, if the material was the problem. But with this, like with Old Holland, this paint, I mean, you look at it, it's pristine. Comes out of the tube. There's no blobs of oil, there's no puddles, there's no nothing. This paint is just absolutely gorgeous. And there's no fillers, there's no excess anything in this paint. These tubes of paint are so densely pigmented. It's such a pleasure to work with them. And again, if there's a problem on the painting, it's never the material. And we make sure of that by using only the finest material. So that's the reason that we don't do student grade material, because student grade material will hold you back. And I know that sounds counter, right? They would make student grade material for students because it's inexpensive, but then you pay for it in time and energy, right? And it's like, I mean, I say this all the time, your most valued commodity is your time. You know, like if you can afford to do, to work with better material, do. You know, not everybody can. Like I said, like for me growing up, I get it. For me growing up, I couldn't have purchased Old Holland. Even if I understood its value, I couldn't have done it. But I can tell you that once I was able to, and I started using it, I understood the difference between the cost and value of it. And it's been the paint I've used, I mean, forever, because it's an incredible product. And again, I can tell you that, much like I was saying yesterday about, or like even today about my commitment to my students, I'm committed to my student success. Old Holland is a small company. The people that are there, they're committed to this product. This is not a big corporation. Like, it's a handful of people. You walk in there, you could actually meet everybody that works there, right? And know them by name by the time you leave. It's not a company that's producing, 100 million tubes of paint, of titanium white every year. This is a small company. And they pay very close attention to what they do. Everybody that's there, they understand that like their name is attached to this product. And they put it out into the world. They take very seriously the traditions. Like I said, I mean, Old Holland aligns the product and the way that everything is done there. It aligns so beautifully with the Evolve. It's great. I love the fact that we have a relationship with them.
So this kind of brings me to a bigger question then. Like, who is Evolve for? What kind of person would be interested in Evolve? Because like, if I just want to have a nice day painting and having fun and not much more than that, like, would you recommend that kind of person join Evolve?
Yeah, why not? Right, because you can take this as far as you want. So I have a couple of hundred students at the school here. And in a given year, maybe one goes off to art college or is looking for a career. Just one, that's it. Everybody else is doing it just because they enjoy it and they want to be good at it. And the school happens to be in their neighborhood. There are other art schools around here, extracurricular art programs. Certain students, they come here because they want what we offer, right? And so they want to be able to do what they see here. And so, but it's a hobby for them, right? And they never intend for it to be anything else. but that's fine. Like, you know, like I have a grandmother that comes here. She's learning how to paint so that she can paint her grandkids. That's her whole reason to learn how to paint. She wants to be able to paint, to document her grandchildren. I can't think of a more noble reason to paint. It's not about money for her. It's about doing something to produce, to immortalize her grandchildren in a format that will endure, that generations from now it'll still be here. And they'll be able to say not just like, hey, that was me when I was a child, but grandma painted that, right? Like, and so, I mean, that's just the coolest thing. If you're gonna do something, if you're gonna spend time to learn how to do something, why learn how to do it badly? You know, if you have access. You know, it's like, you think about like golfing. If you had the choice to learn how to golf with Tiger Woods or with Bob, the guy who has the driving range across the street, like, who would you train with if you had the choice? Right? Even if you don't plan to be a professional golfer, you'd have to be insane to not take Tiger Woods. You'd have to be out of your mind. You know? You don't have to be a pro, but the insights that you're going to get from training with somebody like that who's been there and done that, I mean, it's priceless. It's priceless. And you can then take it to whatever degree you want. You're not going to be held back by the limits of the teacher, that's for sure, right? And that's the thing, you know, like where you go and study, like you don't have to do everything that is offered, right? You don't have to take it all to a professional level, but why not get good at something if you enjoy it? You wouldn't take an art class if you didn't enjoy it and have an interest in learning it. So if you're going to do that, why not take the best one and learn it well? Get really good at it so that you can do something with it that you're proud of. You know? Okay, I'm basically done. I'm leaving the rest of this the way it is.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna now knock out the shirt, and then I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna do a little bit of the hair. And so, the shirt, I got a few marks that are dark. These are kind of like, they're shadows. I don't really have anything over here. I'm trying to like, there's really no marks. But I ran out of information in the photograph. So, I'll put that like that. You get a little bit more oil in this paint. It's a little stiff, just a drop or two. All right, it's a lot of ground to cover, so I want the paint to be a little bit thinner. I don't really care if it's dense or not. And again, a couple of drops of oil is just going to loosen the paint up, but it's still going to cover nicely. And so, and again, like I said, I'm not making a really refined shirt. I'm just getting some color in here so that we know it's a shirt. I like the idea of this kind of scratchy bottom on the painting. Just leave it nice and loose. Just let the painting drop off. And when I take all of this off, we kind of clean this up. This'll look nice.
So I've got a question, a little more personal from me to you. Just kind of like asking advice. Don't really mind if other people are hearing this. So, Evolve has really been taking off recently, and, channels growing, people are becoming more aware of what we're doing. I'm running the YouTube situation, and it's really exciting. Everything's really, really growing, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give to, and you can kind of choose how you want to do this, like either to Evolve, the team, or directly to me. Like, what advice would you give as we're watching things grow and people are becoming more aware of who we are and more people are joining and we're becoming a thing, right? Like a few years ago, people were still finding out about us.
Yeah.
And so what advice would you give about that so that I can grow and continue to be better?
Well, I think, you and I have been talking a little bit about this, but like the big thing is just like be humble. Be humble about what you're doing. It's so easy when people start, you do these things and you get some level of fame, and to buy into the hype and forget who you are. What we do here is about our students. It's not about us. It's about our students. And it's about helping them to get to where they want to be. And never losing sight of that. It's so easy. It's so easy. You get caught up, people from all around the world all of a sudden know who you are, People you'll never cross paths with on the other side of the planet know you. They see your face, they know your name, right? It's easy to buy into, to the idea that you're extra special when the truth is you're here to help people. And if you forget that, you'll no longer be doing what you came here to do.
And losing my passion in it too, very likely.
Yeah. I mean, if right now you're passionate about helping people. But if you're not careful, when you get swept up in all of this stuff, you get 100,000 people following you, 1 million people following you, right? That's not completely unreasonable over time. At some point, does that become more important than the reason you're working and doing this stuff for Evolve now? And that's with everybody, me included. I've been doing this for a long time, and years ago when I was younger, I had some level of celebrity when I was an illustrator. And like I said, it's very easy to get carried away with that stuff, to forget who you are and why you do what you do. And this is even before the internet, for me. But it's easy to just get swept up in all of it and get lost. You see it with actors and professional athletes all the time. They're a completely different species. A lot of them they forget that they're just like us. They live in a completely different world. So, but yeah, to me, that's the big thing, because it is so easy to lose track. Doesn't take much.
And the moment that I think that it's okay, I'm not going to be like one of those people, I'm not going to forget, but then even to just assume that is a slippery slope.
Yeah. And the thing is, you won't know it if it happens. You won't know it if it happens. You'll feel justified in what you feel about yourself, and and it'll be supported by the fact that you've got followers and look, I don't have to go into with Evolve, I don't have to show up in homework rooms, chat rooms, and talk to students. But I do. I drop in all the time, unannounced. I just show up, and I'm hanging out with the students that are doing the program. They don't expect it, but it's always nice. And there are times that I've jumped into a homework chat room, and for those of you who are not in Evolve, we actually have dedicated chat rooms where our students go and they do their homework together. They hang out, they're making friends with people all around the world. But like, I'll show up and I'll jump into a chat room and there'll be one person there. I'll spend an hour just getting to know them. And it's like, I think like that's, like you don't ever want to lose touch with that, because it's stuff like that that helps to make Evolve such a special program, and so, and it's for all of us, it's for all of us to remember why we do what we do at all times, to not lose sight of it, because it is easy to get caught up in all of the success and the hype. This is a lot of really cool stuff going on right now for Evolve, as people are starting to really take notice of the program, getting more and more students coming in and getting the results and posting them out in the world, and it's just, again, very, very easy to lose track of things. And again, I mean, what a pity you come into this and you're feeding your own soul by opening this world up to people who desperately want access to it, and then to surrender that accidentally because you weren't paying attention to, and it became less important than the other stuff. I mean, like for me, like when I see students succeed, like it feeds my soul. I mean, it really does. I'm more interested in a student having a successful day painting than I am in my own self having a successful day painting. I don't really think of it for me, but for the students I do. I celebrate their successes in a way I would never celebrate my own. And like for me, what's really cool is that like here at the school, I could celebrate 100 successes every Sunday in class. It's pretty cool. In the online program, I mean, we have what we call the wall in the program, where we post some of the really strong pieces from each week, and you can just roll down this wall. It goes on and on and on. It's just one incredible painting after another being done in the program. Everything from first exercises all the way through the end of block 8, and it's just I go through it from time to time, and I just marvel at the work, the quality of what the students are producing, and the successes it's their success. I don't get credit for that. I teach, but the success belongs to the person who does the work. And so, like for me, again, like, I mean, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. I couldn't be more proud or excited to see these students doing these incredible things.
And that's an important distinction right there, is intentionally not taking credit when you're seeing other people doing great work, like your own students.
I'm not the one doing the work. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't reasonably make the argument. Like, I have parents that come into the school and they thank me because their kids are doing so well, and I'm like, your child, say something to your child, because your child's the one doing the work. They are the one that has earned the feeling that you're now kind of bestowing upon me. I didn't do the work. I opened some doors, I turned on some lights, I kind of showed them around. They came in and they committed the energy. And the paintings wouldn't look the way they do. They wouldn't be so beautiful if your child hadn't made the commitment. I'm not entitled. I'm not entitled to that praise. That praise has to go to the person who produced the work. And I mean, I know you've seen me do that in here. Like, I have those conversations with parents. They're so happy with me. They're like, oh, thank you so much. And it's like, please, like, let your kids know. Let your kids know how proud you are of what they're doing, because it's entirely them.
I remember that when I was, first starting out under you, a couple years in, just starting to get a handle on painting, and just thanking you for everything. And you just turned it right back on me, and it was surprising. It was kind of alarming. I didn't really know how to take it, because it was sort of like, wait, like, what? Like, I don't see how I earned this, Looking back, it is easier to see how the work that I put in did earn me something. But it is mutual, and that's a beautiful thing about it too, is that there's the help and the helping people alongside in that journey. I guess that's where we get our fulfillment in what
absolutely.
we're doing now. But,
I mean, the truth is that it's a collaboration. The student's not going to do it without the teacher. But the teacher really, the credit really does go to the student, because you can have 10 students and one commits the energy and the other 9 don't, and 9 fail and 1 succeeds in the same classroom with the same teacher, and all the circumstances being the same. And so it's like, well, how much energy do you put in? Do you really do the work? Or you just, or you checked out while you're at class? And I get students that are like that. You would think in this space, like, who would come into this space and not like take advantage? But I get a good number of students that don't take advantage of what's here. Their parents bring them here because their parents realize what this is, and their parents want this for them. But the kids don't really know. Like, it's funny, and you know this, everybody that comes in here thinks this is normal.
Yeah.
They have no idea how incredible what goes on in here is, what they produce. They think that every art school is like this. They have no idea, and which is fine. Like, it's just, it's funny because the school just happens to be in their neighborhood. That's the only reason they have access to it. Just happens to be where they live. But yeah, everybody in here, it's funny, everyone in here, and you have to be in the space to really get it. This, like I said, we're going to show you a couple of paintings later, but everybody in here feels average, which is insane.
Yep, so true.
The girl, just to frame it, in the 3 paintings that we're going to show, the girl on the right, there's a painting of a girl sitting reading a book with a dog. The girl who painted that is 15 years old, and she, right now, is struggling because she doesn't, 15 years old, when you see the painting, you're gonna understand. She's producing professional level work at 15 years old. And she doesn't know if she can, if she's good enough to do commission work. Like, and we're talking about low end, like $200 paintings. And the work is just stunning. But in here, it's average. It's just normal. Everybody paints like that, like the ones who have been around. And so she doesn't feel special, and she feels like, well, in order to be successful in art, you have to be special. Like, you have to stand out amongst the crowd. And, trying to explain to her that in here, like, this is not indicative of what the crowd looks like. You have to be here to understand it. It's hard to describe it. And I know it probably sounds like, even boastful, but you really have to see it. Like I said, when you see these 3 paintings, 13-year-old, 15-year-old, and an 18-year-old, crazy stuff. And all of them just feel like average. None of them is standing around beating their chest like, I'm amazing. They all think they're just like normal.
Yep, I still feel that now.
Yeah. And
just being around these paintings.
Yeah. And I can tell you that these 33 students, when I was 18 years old, they paint circles around me. But even more, when I finished my career as an illustrator, I couldn't do what they've done here. And I was 30 years old. 300 commissioned illustrations, Rolling Stones, Star Wars, National Geographic, like the list goes on and on and on. And these children could run circles around what I was able to do at that time. And they do it effortlessly. So cool.
And how much of a hand do you have with your students when they're making those paintings, like these big ones that we're about to see?
You know what? I'm helpful in them in organizing the photo shoots. They design the paintings, so they will come up with the ideas. I function like an art director. I give them some advice along the way. We then set up the photo shoots, and they shoot the subject. And then from there, they basically make the paintings. If they get stuck on something, they'll ask me for some insight, but I don't touch their paintings. I don't do anything. They work. They do their work. And I stay out of it. Like, I believe, unlike a lot of teachers, I never touch my students' work because I want their successes to be theirs as well as their failures. I don't want responsibility for their failures. I don't take credit for their successes, and I'm not going to be responsible for their failures if they're failures of labor, if they're not willing to commit the energy to get the work done. So, okay. And I'm just kind of messing with this down here just to try to make it a little bit more interesting. I don't want to just leave it kind of weird looking. So. Okay, now just some hair. And so I'm kind of forced here to go a little bit darker than, like these are more blonde, but because of what I have here, if I put blonde on it wouldn't show. So I'm, to a degree, I'm forced into something a little bit darker, which is fine because it kind of falls in line with everything else. And if I want, I can always highlight the stuff later on.
Now, if you glazed a darker background into that, that would be buried pretty much, right? You would have to kind of reestablish it.
Yeah, and then I would just paint in the lighter shades right on top of it.
Right.
And here I'm like, you know, I'm making marks. I'm kind of looking at this, but I'm not copying it. Just, I've got some lines down, and I'm just scribbling some impression of hair. And again, I'm not gonna take it very far. It's not gonna be able to. And so I'm gonna have to come back and address it again later on, which is fine. I'll do it in the next pass. And the glazing will help me to bulk this up a little bit, but at least I've got some placement of some hair in here. And who knows, maybe it'll look terrible. I may have to go back in and like do a major overhaul. So I may have to paint it directly to get it where it needs to be. But for now, I'm just gonna lay the hair in and just kind of hint at it, get some of the movement. And then I'll just let it be, and that's it. Like,
it's interesting here to see your hand, the way that you're using the brush, has completely changed from how you were working with the shirt. You're kind of making these motions, these gestures without even touching the canvas, and then you're deciding to make the sweeping marks that seem to make sense to you. It's like you're testing it out almost.
Yeah, I kind of test the movement to see if it feels natural to me. I'm kind of following curves and all from the photograph, and then just like, okay, this one, like I kind of make the movement that matches what I think, and I see how it feels. If it feels good to me, then I'll make the mark.
Mm.
I really hate the way this looks, but nothing to do about it at this point. I will be able to go back in and make changes to it. I'm not worried about that. For now, this will suffice.
You know, Kevin, I am about to take a photograph of this and put it up on our thumbnails.
What are you trying to say?
Just saying. It's going to be out there in the world.
Yeah, well, I just grabbed a little bit of my blue that I used for the shirt, and I'm adding it into the brown to create more, something like that. Maybe something a little bit denser that maybe cover. Just get something a little bit stronger in here. Just so it feels a little bit more substantial. It feels more in line with the rest of the painting. Well, it's kind of ugly. Wow. That really is ugly. That's so wrong. that'll do. I'm not going to worry about this. Like I said, I'll figure that out later. I'll do it in the glaze, because I don't know what I'm going to do here. My thinking is that it's going to get quite a bit darker back in here, and then I'll just drop in highlights on top. Yeah. Anyway, so that's basically it. I'm going to stop right there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep, that's it. We'll stop right there. Good, so once this dries, I'm going to seal it, and that's going to bring everything back up. Like all of this kind of ugly stuff is going to go away. It's going to look the way that it did when I first painted it, when all the paint was wet. And so next time we come in, you'll see that, and then I'm going to glaze. I'm probably going to put this paint aside. It's going to stay wet. These big puddles will stay wet for me. I'm not worried about this. I'm more the skin. I'm going to hold on to these for glazing for later on in case I need a light that matches what's here. And that'll all make sense in the next pass when I do it, but we'll leave this stuff here. I'll leave it intact. So.
Awesome. I'm excited. Glazing is always fun. Really brings the whole painting to life.
Yeah, one little thing I want to do in here, I'm just noticing. I'm just going to open up this shadow just a little bit. I'm not liking how dark it is. Again, I can glaze darker shade in there later on, but for now, just open it up a little bit. Making a mess. Okay. Wow. Okay, that'll do. Okay, I'm stopping. Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and see you soon with the last pass.
Yeah, the last pass will be this coming Thursday, 8 p.m. EST, February 3rd. Very excited about this glazing pass, and everyone, we'll see you soon. Also, if anyone isn't aware, last night Kevin set up a raffling system which opened and closed just for the people who were on that live stream, but we will be announcing the winner in the next live stream. So hope to see you all there. Take care, everyone.
Hey everybody, so these are the paintings I was talking about. So this is a copy of an Albert Bierstadt. This student is 13 years old, right? This painting is 3 feet by 4 feet. Like I said, if you saw this in a museum, you wouldn't even think twice about it. 13 years old. She's been with me for a number of years, but she started in a kids class at, I don't know, maybe like 7 years old doing pastels. So she's only been painting for a couple of years. I'm gonna come down here. This is the painting I was talking about, the 15-year-old. So this student, again, feeling quite average. Again, 3 feet by 4 feet. These are summer program paintings. But, you know, you can see the quality of this. These big paintings, they're not easy to do, but this is 15 years old, just 15. And then last but not least, this student was 18 years old when she did this. And again, these were all done last summer, but 18 years old. Again, all three of these students feel average. They feel just like normal art students. They don't feel special. They don't feel like they're doing anything incredible. They're just showing up and they're doing the work. They're painting. But anyway, if you ever get a chance, if you're ever in central New Jersey and you get a chance, reach out to me. You can come in and visit the school. You can see the stuff with your own eyes.
Wonderful. So cool. All right.